What's going on?
Because I just realized someone's about to get Christmas soon in like the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, in Common Writer, yes.
Christmas
Anyways,
is a horrible
hello!
time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I am Razim, and this is Kur Tales, where Kur takes a big old lore dump all over everyone.
Oh,
That's
that did not sound right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do,
like
do I need
wow.
to get the hose?
Maybe.
Kerr, help me set up the fire hose. Please?
Yeah, we're gonna need it for getting cleaned off of this lore dump.
Oh.
Get him.
Alrighty then. And hydro cannon.
Yes, just make me all moist.
Yeah, I'll get you all moist as you're being plastered against a stone wall because of, heavy pressure water.
this is why I enjoy being the bad guy.
Zul. Zul! I am Nevis, King of Conquerors, and I am an Exalted.
Uh-huh.
Your pathetic water has no power over me.
More
Well,
like
hello
exaltedly
there,
overconfident.
Also, okay, you got.
Confident.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm Kur. I am the storyteller for many of these games. I run a lot of different things. Good to see everyone today. Normally we would be having a session, but I won free entry into a big magic tournament tomorrow, so I actually have to get to bed at a decent time in order to get enough rest for it and then travel and such. So we're doing something a little bit different today. I am doing what we call Kur Tales here. This is, as Nevis said, though I'm not going to repeat it, basically where I go into like a deep dive of information and info on whichever game we really want. As this would be Exalted time slot, I figured why not give a big guide into creation and the world of Exalted. We have our players here. If you guys just want to say hi.
Hello.
Hello!
I had nothing better to do tonight, so I was like, I'll show up.
My heart.
Listen, it was Kur, I'm sorry, it was too easy.
I'm going to go cry in a corner now.
No, you're not. You are contractually obligated to complete this stream.
The one time I literally just turned off my soundboard. I had the perfect sound ready and just not.
But yes. This is something a little bit special though too. This is a very much an interactive sort of thing. My players, please ask questions. And ask anything, no matter how small. Ask it if you have it. Stream chat also for you guys. Feel free. If during my explanations, during my talks, you guys have a question, curious about something, want to ask literally anything about pretty much anything, I will basically stop and answer it.
What is 1 plus 1?
Endowment.
Where are we at?
Tokeme tipped $25.
If
The
we're in the
moon.
wild, for all we know, it could be 1 plus 1 could equal fish. Or purple or
Toshime,
left.
thank you so much for that donation.
Mm-hmm.
Kur,
Yes.
you going?
No, sorry. I wasn't sure if you were going to say anything else.
Donation goal is not completed.
Okay.
Yeah, but even if it does get completed, it's not exactly relevant to tonight. But it's still very much appreciated for the donations and such.
Okay, so let's get started then, everyone, shall we? So for Exalted, what is Exalted? Where is it? Where does it take place at? Exalted takes place in the world known as creation. Long ago, there was nothing. There was nothing but a sea of roiling chaos, madness, and insanity. Anything and everything could happen in this sea of chaos. One thing could show up for 2 seconds before literally devolving into nothing more than motes of essence, before eventually reforming into something else, only for the process to repeat again and again and again. Nothing was stable. Nothing was really anything at this point. And then something was. Pretty much, yes. Yes, Jits.
Black Friday. Huh. Okay.
A being was created from this chaos. A being
A
that was
gleaming
able
endowment.
to define itself.
Rygon plays tipped
Thank you,
$25.
Rygon, thank you very much for the donation. Well, I guess I'll get with you and figure out which characters to get and details on them and stuff. But anyways, if you guys do want to keep going on the donation goal, each time it's completed, we will get another token for Starlight Expeditions from one of the various NPCs that we encounter. Ideally, ones that will be encountered on a regular basis.
I'm guessing color commentary is a bit of a no here.
No, you're free to comment and stuff. So from this sea of chaos, a being was created. A being that was able to define itself not by what it was around it, but by what it said it was.
It was a Karen.
Depending on which one you're talking about, yes.
That sounds bad.
This being and eventually others like it began to be born, so to speak. They are known as the Primordials. The Primordials each were dedicated to a concept, a one particular thing that they basically defined their existence to. For example, the first and most powerful of the Primordials was their emperor, their leader, their king. The Tyrant Star was one of his names that he went by. Therian, I believe, is the name he usually went under, if I remember correctly. The Tyrant Star. He entirely devoted himself to kinghood. All were his subjects. It was his duty to watch over and protect his subjects, but it was also his subjects' duty to serve and obey him. So everything that he saw and did was defined by the principle of kinghood and basically being the emperor of everything. One of the others, we don't know what her old name was, but we know what she became. Her name that she goes by now is She Who Lives in Her Name, or Swilla for short. I don't usually use it that much, but it's always it's a joke name among followers of Exalted. Swilla. She Who Lives in Her Name defined herself by order. Everything has its place. Everything has its order in the world. She took the form predominantly of 100,000 flaming glass spheres floating in orbit around each other, forming into great geometric shapes as she moved. The Tyrant Star, as you can guess, usually took the form of a star in the sky. He could also take other forms though too. These beings, these primordials, were not defined by one body. They could exist in multiple places, in multiple times, in different forms. They also had lesser souls that served them. They had third, second, and first circle souls, as they were known as. These were the Devas. These Devas basically served as their champions, and basically the first circle were a dime a dozen. They were all basically the same creature in multiple different bodies. They could develop individuality, but it was rare. Their duty and purpose was to basically do one thing really, really well. That was their job. That was their task. They were the menial labor. The second souls were in charge of lesser concepts, like say one primordial was the primordial of artifice. One of his lesser second circle souls could be in charge of crafting like specific things, armor and weapons, that type of thing. And then the third circle souls were a defining concept of these beings. One of these souls, was known as the fetish soul. The fetish soul, sorry.
And that's where furries came from.
Every primordial has a fetish soul. If that soul dies, the primordial that's attached to it will basically get turned inside out and turned into something brand new. Because that fetish soul defines who they are. What they are. Anything that happens to that soul will change them. So they are usually the most protected of any of their souls, also usually the most powerful of them as well. Now that you know a little bit about the primordials, what did they do? They made creation. They decided they got sick and tired of living in a sea of chaos. So they wanted to make something. They wanted to see if they could do it. So working together, all of the primordials were able to create from this chaos a stable, real land. And they began to define it, to give it shape, form, weather, everything. They built it from the ground up. And in order to basically help with this, they created the gods. The gods' duty was to oversee the world. Everything had a god attached to it. The gods' duty was to basically deal with the menial labor and the paperwork of whatever they were attached to. So, for instance, the god of trees was in charge of all of the trees in creation. The god of grass was in charge of the grass. I mean, sometimes you have very little things. Other times you have very, very big defining concepts like the moon, the sun, the stars. The bigger some
entropy. Or as we have the god of crabs.
I mean, you do got a god of crabs.
Yes, you guys do have the god of crabs.
The god of crabs.
But the big thing here is the gods at first didn't mind it. This was their job. This was their duty. This is what they did. And while they were
One
making
was called
creation,
There's Dancing with the Crabs.
Dancing with the Crabs.
It was a necessity. Sorry.
Yes.
Does the crab god dance to the crab
Yes.
song?
Yes, he does.
Okay, that's
Um,
hilarious.
While creation was being made, the mortal races were being created, as well as animals and all that stuff. And once they were done, the primordials created heaven, Yushan. Heaven is not the way that we today would view it. It is not a place for mortal souls to go after death. That's not what it's for. Yushan, aka Heaven, I'll use those two terms interchangeably here, is basically a place for the primordials to live at. It is their basically kingdom to retire and do what they do, to do what they will. And the gods were in charge of maintaining creation and making sure that everything ran the way they were supposed to. I mean, pretty much that's what they kind of did, was enjoy themselves. In Yushan, there is something known as the Games of Divinity.
Hey, Kerr.
No one knows what the Games of Divinity are. What?
If you're responding to the chat, you should probably read off the message and who it's from.
Sorry. In Yushan, there is what is known as the Games of Divinity. No one knows what the Games of Divinity are. We even me as like the DM, I do not know what the Games of Divinity actually are. All we know is the games are addicting and the greatest experience anyone could possibly have. And that is what the primordials tended to spend their time on, was playing the Games of Divinity. The gods, working, for like the last million years without a break or a vacation, kind of got tired of everything. You got the same dickish bosses who aren't really listening to you, who don't care what you're doing, and just kind of pushing aside your concerns or complaints. And yeah, you haven't had a vacation for the last 20,000 years. Kind of get tired of that. The issue was this. The gods were given a geese. They were cursed by the primordials to be unable to raise their hand against them unless they were attacked first by the primordial. That would temporarily lift the geese and allow the god to defend themselves before it would reassert itself once the danger was past. But the gods began to talk among themselves. What if they could find a way to basically throw down the primordials and take over creation themselves? What if they could run things? Rykon's saying, pretty sure the Games of Divinity were a pie eating contest. We don't know. This could be some damn good pies.
I want pie.
But they couldn't figure out what to do. They had no idea how they would even try to go about this. Until one of the primordials came to them. The primordial Atoshthon. The god, or the primordial of basically machines, technology, and innovation and creation. Those were his thing. So much so that he actually found a way to think outside of his chosen subjects. He was really, really terrible at it, but he could actually think about things that were not in his wheelhouse, so to speak. Which was basically impossible for them, because he did some surgery on himself to make him able to do it, because he wanted to. Atoshthon was the redheaded stepchild of the primordials. Whenever he would make stuff, some of the other primordials would break his thing. And he got really, really, really sick and tired of that. He found out what the gods were planning. and what they were thinking about doing. Rather than tell the primordials or go after the gods himself, he uh, dragons. Okay. All right, we got a question from the chat. I'm gonna put a pause in this real quick. We have a question from the chat. I'm curious about the dragons in the game. So for the dragons, in creation, there are two main kinds of dragons in creation. There are the sorry, I take that back. Three kinds of dragons for the most part. You have the direct children of Gaia. Gaia is the primordial of creation, basically. She fused with creation to give it stability, and she's considered the primordial of creation. She has 5 children. The dragon of water, fire, wood, air, and earth. These 5 dragons basically bound themselves to a pillar within the wild, within the sea of chaos, in order to help stabilize creation, and they reside inside of these pillars. The main pillar of Earth is actually the giant mountain in the center of creation. These dragons live within these pillars. They are considered the greatest of the dragons. Beyond them, you have the lesser elemental dragons. These are very powerful dragons, despite their names. They are basically the equivalent of gods themselves. Every dragon is considered to be a god in Yushan's eyes. Their duties usually serve to be arbiters and to make sure that if there's any corruption, they deal with it. That was sort of their role to do. Not to say that they haven't become corrupted over the centuries. But for the most part, a lesser elemental dragon's duty is to censor and to ensure stability and the law is carried out, and that any corruption or deceit is found out and dealt with. There is one elemental dragon for each direction of creation: the west, north, east, south, and the center. And then under each of those dragons, there are other lesser elemental dragons that serve like for a particular city or area. And then beyond them, there is one single greater elemental dragon. The elemental dragons could develop their powers by developing their essence. Basically, their power. That's what they draw their energy from, is what's called essence. When a dragon reaches a certain level of essence, they will evolve from a lesser elemental dragon to a greater elemental dragon. This has only ever happened once in creation's history. The resulting dragon basically went so batshit crazy that he tried to burn and destroy all of creation before the god of the sun, the unconquered sun, fought him, bound him, and sealed him within the sun itself to protect creation. He has been let out, I think, like 2 or 3 times to destroy something. And when he is released, basically an entire area of creation is utterly, basically almost wiped away. It's only ever happened like once or twice, I think, though, where his chains were loosened. But since then, all lesser elemental dragons have been forbidden on pain of death to develop their essence to the level of a greater elemental dragon. And those are basically the dragons of creation. Usually they take the form of Chinese-style dragons.
Insert Chinese music here.
Just watch out for Mr. Smiley Dragon.
What? Is this an inside joke?
He's talking about the greater elemental dragon.
Oh. Okay.
Shoot. One sec, my thing fell off. Reattaching this. But jumping back now to where we were at, Atoch-san basically was sick and tired of his siblings breaking his stuff. So he thought the gods basically giving them a taste of their own medicine was just what the doctor ordered. So he took parts from the greatest of the gods. The unconquered sun, god of the sun, Luna, goddess of the moon, the 5 maidens of fate, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, and Venus. And from Gaia herself, who was Luna's lover. From them, he created the exaltations, personifications of those gods' power. Basically, think of them as like little shards of that god, almost. And for the unconquered sun and Luna, he created 300 exaltations. For the 5 maidens of fate, he created 100 altogether, 20 for each maiden. And then Gaia got her own little special gift. Her exaltation would pass on through the blood of her chosen. Hers are the only one that could reproduce and make more exalted. For the unconquered sun came the solars. For Luna came the lunars. For the maidens of fate, the sidereals. And for Gaia, the dragon-blooded. Each one bound to an element. And these chosen, these exalted, were created from humans who displayed unbreaking will and the will to be a hero no matter what. An example of what an exaltation can look like. I'll use one of the first characters I ever made, actually, when I was a player for Exalted. He was a slave. And he was he was trying to lead a slave rebellion to free the people around him. And during the rebellion, they were beginning to be put down. It looked like he was going to fail. But rather than give up or try to run, he tried to rally everyone. He tried to get everyone back up. He tried to fight back. He didn't give up. Even though it was going to be impossible, even though it looked like he was going to die, he refused to back down. And he was blessed with a solar exaltation and exalted as one of the chosen of the sun. And with that newfound power, he led the rebellion on and turned what was to be a sure defeat into an overwhelming victory. We'll get into the Ebon Dragon soon, Toshime.
That's who I was saying about the smiling dragon.
Mm-hmm. But the exaltation will seek out people not because they were chosen by the god, but the exaltations choose their hosts. No one can decide who the exaltation will go to. And these first exaltations went out to the exalted and empowered them. And being outfitted with the greatest weapons and armor that the gods could create, and with an army of over 1 million dragon bloods to lead, the exalted host marched against the primordials in what was known as the Primordial War. No one knows exactly how long the Primordial War went for or what happened during it. A lot of really, really experimental weapons were used during the war that made remembering exactly what happened difficult. But the Exalted won. The Exalted beat the Primordials. And to put this in perspective, though, for all of you, the Primordials viewed humans as ants. When this war started, the Primordials saw this as like, oh, this is what it looks like when a group of ants starts marching towards your picnic. You're not going to care about it. It's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to do anything. And then it did. To the point where at least 3 Primordials were killed by these Exalted. The Primordials were never meant to die. They were supposed to be literally immortal to everything. The Exalted found ways to kill them, though. Originally, the system that is set up in creation is when a mortal dies, their soul is basically recycled, cleaned of all memories, and then reincarnated again. The Primordials, though, had nowhere to go. And so creation wasn't built to handle their souls. When they died, they began to fall towards oblivion, to the everlasting pit of nothingness. But as they fell, their memories of creation bound them to creation, like chains digging into their flesh and holding their corpses. And around them, from their memories of creation, a new dark world began to form. And this is how the underworld came to be. A dark mirror of reflection born from the memories of those who died and from the Primordials themselves. These Primordials who died are now known as the Neverborn, beings trapped in eternal agony and a nightmarish existence who want nothing more than to finally die, to finally cease to exist. That's all they want, is the pain to stop. But the only way for them to die is for creation to die. Because so long as creation exists, their chains of memory will hold them to it. And so those ghosts and undead that they can corrupt or create, they send out to try to murder creation. Because all they want to do is cease to exist. And the only way for that to happen is for the rest of creation to rest in peace. But to also give you another little bit of example here of like how big of a deal this was, especially for my players. You guys know the Cthulhu mythos and stuff, right? You know, like the elder gods and all that.
Mm-hmm.
On a
The-
small level, yes.
Think of it this way: the Primordials were on the level of like the elder gods, like Cthulhu or creatures like that. Creatures that cause pure madness, despair, and basically death to any mortal that witnesses them. They are basically unstoppable forces of nature. Mortals fear Cthulhu. Cthulhu fears the Exalted.
That says
The-
something.
The Exalted were able to kill beings of that power. That is what they were made to do. One of the stories goes that a solar Exalted who had only been exalted for 4 years faced one of the Primordials. And they suffocated that Primordial to death. They throttled them and killed them. The thing is here, everyone. Primordials don't need to breathe. And one of the solars was able to suffocate one to death. When the war finally ended, though, for those primordials who survived, their fetish souls were murdered and slain, and the primordials themselves were changed. Then they were forced to swear oaths of obedience and surrender to the primordial or to the exalted and the gods, to never again threaten creation or to be able to come back. Then them and their armies, their devas that served them, were stuffed inside of their emperor, who was ripped inside out by what was done to him. And then he was basically hurled into hammer space to become his own realm. Yes, I know it sounds silly, but that's the easiest way to put it. The King of Primordials was torn inside out. All the other Primordials and their devas were stuffed inside of him, and then he was hurled into hammer space. The Tyrant Star became known as Malpheus, the same name as the realm that he now made up. Also known as Hell. The Devas became demons, and the Primordials became forevermore known as beings called the Yozai. The Yozai now wait and plot in their hellish world. They want out. They want back in creation. This world that was stolen from them, this world that was taken from them by these ants, they want it back. But their oaths keep them from doing anything, from leaving Malpheus. They can't do it. But there is a loophole in the clause. There is one loophole that they have struggled to attempt to break. If, and only if, creation resembles hell, they can leave Malpheus and enter creation again. So their goal, what they are attempting to do now is using their demons that can enter creation. Because of the pacts they swore, the Exalted hosts gain the ability to summon demons to serve them. So now they are attempting to use their demons to corrupt and twist creation into a mirrored reflection of hell, so that they can escape and take creation back to where it's supposed to be, with them at the top again. Because it's not easy to put it this way. The original primordials were bound by what they are. They can't understand people the way like we understand each other. They are literally unable to do that. They can only see the world through their own lens of whatever they are. To them, they were just doing what they naturally did. They didn't see it wrong to hurt people. Malpheus didn't understand why humans would fear him because he killed some of them for not giving him the proper allegiance that is owed to him, to not swear the proper oaths or to defy him. Like, that was his duty as a king to punish that. He had to do it to be a proper king. It literally doesn't make sense to him. And now, like, for serving their duties and being what they were cast into hell, forsaken, and just basically left to rot. Yeah, they're fucking pissed. And they want payback. But with the Primordial War over, creation entered a golden age. a time period known as the First Age. The First Age lasted for, I believe, over 1,000 years, if I remember correctly. And this First Age was a time of wonder, of beauty, of creation, of a golden age of perfection, where the Solars led creation with the other Exalted to create wonders far beyond anything we could imagine. Floating cities and palaces, plants that gave their user basically eternal life so long as they kept drinking it, like a philosopher's stone. Cities of glass that was unbreakable, able to survive even in the depths of a lava-filled cavern.
The flying fortress known as Mount Galapa.
Yep. Like, this was a time of pure wonder and creation, and it was glorious. But there was one downside. One thing that slowly began to rear its ugly head as the years began to go by. What no one knew, except perhaps for Saturn, the main of secrets herself, and a being known as Nara-O, the god of secrets known only to one person. They are perhaps the only two people who really know about it. But what it is known as the Great Curse. The Great Curse is a curse that afflicts every Exalt ever. No matter what an Exalt will have it. It is literally like a little curse upon the exaltation itself. And it actually takes the form of a little black spot on the exaltation somewhere. What the curse does is it amplifies the darkest and worst traits of the Exalted. It takes a different form for each person. But what the Great Curse does, though, is it pushes the Exalted and basically makes them start to act crazy. To start to act like a tyrant. To act cruel, sadistic, argumentative. And when you have the amount of power an Exalted does, that ends very, very badly. But no one knew about it. And the Solars were the ones who were affected by the curse the greatest. They were the most powerful. They were the ones who took the greatest hit from the curse. And by the end of the First Age, it was to the point where the Great Curse was basically controlling all of their actions. These wonderful lawbringers who were once basically people of pure justice and righteousness had basically descended into becoming paranoid, kind of sadistic tyrants who would sacrifice thousands of people just for the hell of it. And no one knew about the Great Curse. To everyone, even like the other Solars and stuff, like they just saw these people who, by the way, most Exalted are immortal. Unless you're killed in battle, you will not die from old age. So most of these Solars and such were thousands of years old. They were just considered to have lost their minds to the power. They were corrupted by their own power. That's what everyone thought. It got so bad that some of the experiments that the Solars were doing involving essence, basically the power source that gave them their power, they were causing damage to what is known as the Loom of Fate. Literally what fate is made on. It was causing damage to it because of all the essence that was being used. It was creating holes and frays in fate itself and basically screwing with the rules and laws of creation. Up was down, down was up, and left was purple. So the Sidereals went to the Solars and went, so here's what's going on. All this essence that's being used in your experiments, you're causing so much that you're actually making damage to the Loom of Fate. Can you scale it back, please? The Solars were like, so we're actually damaging the Loom of Fate by all of the essence we're doing? And the Sidereal was like, yeah, pretty much. It's causing some major damage. Rather than take that as a thing of, yeah, we shouldn't do that anymore, thanks for letting us know, the Solars were like, let's see how much damage we actually can do to it. The Sidereals were not pleased by this. So, all 100 Sidereals met in secret in Yushan. And they went to the Loom of Fate. They were going to do the Great Prophecy. Basically, what they were going to try to do was look into the future. And they were going to attempt to divine what path they should take going forward. Because they were supposed to be the advisors. They were meant to be the people who guided everyone. But they didn't know what to do. Like, the Solars were just going crazier and crazier. And eventually, while they were working together, they began to find these lines to the future. They began to divine a possible future that could be coming. And it wasn't easy. I think the Great Prophecy lasted like 10 or 20 years altogether that they worked on this. And eventually, they discovered 3 possible futures that they could do. The first is known as the future of darkness. The vision of darkness. This is where creation was unmade, creation was destroyed, and basically everything was claimed by oblivion. The second future was the vision of bronze. The vision of bronze was a future where the Solars were cast down and murdered, and the Dragon Bloods were raised up in their place to be the new protectors and stewards of creation. Creation would be forever diminished and would forever be lesser than what it once was, but it would survive. And it would still thrive. And then was the most difficult future. This one was less a solid future like the other two, but more like flashes of visions of possibility. They knew it existed, but it was very difficult to figure out how that future could happen. This is known as the vision of gold. The vision of gold showed the Solars were freed from their madness, and that creation was raised to an even greater height, far surpassing even the first age. And then the Sidereals began to debate with each other, to ask each other, to talk to each other. What do we do? What should we do? What path should we take?
And then the Sidereal's curse kicked in.
Yup. The Sidereal's curse is perhaps the most insidious of them all. The Sidereal's great curse causes them to gain hubris.
Joke.
And the more of them there are together, the greater the hubris is. And you had all 100 Sidereals working together, basically in the same room as each other. Things got really, really bad during these debates. And the only thing that basically they could all agree on was the vision of darkness had to be opposed at all costs. No matter what, it had to be avoided. Jits asked, so they turn on each other? Not exactly. What ended up happening was over the next few years, they basically spend time debating and talking with each other. And 2 Sidereals began to come out as sort of the leaders of this debate. You had Ketchup Kajak, who was the leader of the Bronze faction. He championed that the Solars needed to be stopped, that creation needed to be protected no matter what. Even if the worst was to happen, if creation was to be diminished, at least it would survive. And they had a surefire 100% way of doing that. They knew how to do that. And he championed the Bronze vision, that they should do that path. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was his former wife who was the leader of the Gold faction. One second.
Sprinkling.
Duke Duke.
Basically, what happened was she championed the Gold faction. She believed that where there is life, there is hope. And this shows that there is hope for the Solars yet. That they can save them and show them a better way, and creation can be even greater for it. But then they decided the Bronze faction began to take action, preparing. And during what is known as the Week of Calibration, the week at the end of every year, when the sky goes dark and the sun is obscured, a great feast is held every year for 5 days. During that particular calibration feast, the Bronze faction struck. They murdered the Gold faction's members. Ketchup Kajak killed his wife personally for the betterment of creation. And he went on to lead the Sidereals and the Dragonbloods to cast down and murder the Solars and the Lunars who rose up to try to protect them. He led armies in the billions against the Solars. And even then, even caught without their weapons, without their armor, without basically knowing that they were being attacked at this feast by their allies, the Solars fought back, and they slaughtered millions for every Solar that died. But one by one, the Solars were killed and hunted down. Their exaltations were taken, sealed away in what is called the Jade Prison by the Sidereals. The Sidereals launched an attack upon Lytic, the god of exaltation himself, in his office. They attacked him in his office and basically pinned him down and stole the exaltations as they were coming back to him to be cleaned and sent back to the world. They sealed these exaltations away, and then they cast the Jade Prison, as they called it, the reliquary for all these exaltations, into the sea so that they could never escape and reincarnate again. Only about a dozen Solars survived to this point, and they were hunted down year after year. Every time they would be killed and reincarnate, the Dragonbloods and the Sidereals were ready to hunt them down and kill them again and again and again. The Lunars retreated. Unable to protect the Solars and being hunted as well, they retreated back into the wild, the sea of chaos around creation. And there they were granted a boon by Luna herself to protect her children. They were given knowledge of special tattoos that would protect them from the wild. The Lunar's gift is shapeshifting. That was their ability. They could change and take the form of anyone or anything that they had tasted the heart's blood of. And the wild was influencing that in order to turn them into chimera. Basically, they were trapped in beast form. Every time they shifted, more of them would turn into an animal, part of an animal, until they were just like an abomination that would eventually go crazy. These tattoos, however, prevented that. They stabilized their forms.
Pet the
And so
abomination.
and so the Lunars waited at the edges of creation, attacking and harrowing the Dragon Bloods and the Sidereals. And after all this was done, Heaven was pissed at what the Sidereals did. Heaven was livid. Not necessarily that the Solars had been killed, but because the gods, like the Sidereals, were divided into the Bronze faction and the Gold faction. Some gods supported the Gold faction, some gods supported the Bronze faction. However, all of the gods agreed that what happened with Lytek was unacceptable. So, in order to keep from being audited to an inch of their lives, and basically being stripped of all power and authority in heaven, the Sidereals launched a great plan. They would go to one of the constellations in the sky known as the Mask, and they would change it. They would use the Mask, which is the constellation of secrets and knowledge, and they would basically hide all proof that they were involved in the usurpation. Everyone would know they did it, but there wouldn't be any proof that they did it. So no one could do anything about it.
Hint, hint,
They-
the mage game.
They broke the constellation of the Mask. Things that were common knowledge became basically secrets only one person knew, and great, horrible, disgusting, evil secrets became common knowledge, driving people mad and insane. It got so bad that the Maiden of Secrets herself had to step in and basically fix the mask herself. And yeah, it was bad. But now we're moving more into modern day. Yeah, oh, it was a huge mess. Huge mess, Jits. Now we're moving into modern day, though. Closer to where most games take place at. In today's world, creation is severely diminished. Two great disasters have happened since the usurpation occurred. The first was the Great Contagion, a supernatural plague that swept through creation and killed 9 out of 10 living things that came in contact with it. Not people, living things. It was so bad and so deadly that the bodies themselves wouldn't even rot or decay, because the microbes that would do that died as well. You would just literally have a village filled with corpses that just never changed. And it was so bad that literally 9 out of 10 of every living thing died from this. And towards the end of the contagion, when creation was at its weakest, excuse me, the fair folk attacked. The beings of the wilds, known as the gentry, or the fair folk, or the fae. They have many different names that they can be called. They had always lived within the wild, but they saw creation as sort of this blight upon their beautiful chaos and stories that they told. And so, one of them decided to lead a great crusade to unmake and unweave creation. Leading an army of fair folk, they went into creation and began to unravel it as they passed through it, slaughtering and dissolving the defenders who tried to stand up to them. Over 9/10 of creation were erased in this. Only 1/10 of creation still exists today from what it used to be at the height of the first age. And all hope seemed lost. There was nothing that could stand up to this army. There was nothing that could stop them. It looked like creation was about to die. Until a single dragon-blooded officer made it into the central mountain of creation. Within that mountain was built a device known as the Realm Defense Grid. She was able to make it through the traps, the secrets, into the defense grid itself, and she was able to activate it. The mountain blazed to life before a great sweeping beam of purifying fire lanced out and slaughtered the Fairfolk army. It basically turned them all to glass as it swept over them. And single-handedly, this dragon-blooded officer stepped out from that manse. And from that day forward, she was known as the Scarlet Empress, queen and mother of all dragon blood. And since then, she has ruled over creation for like the last, I think, 100 years, give or take. There are 12 families who are descended directly from her. These are the royalty of the dragon blood, basically, the nobles of the dragon blood.
13, but one fell
13.
out of favor.
That's what they're technically considered to be extinct because everyone thought they were wiped out during the Great Purge, but they survived. That's why I said 12. But yes, there are technically 13. These families are each related to the Empress by blood. She had 13 children, and each of those childs went on to create a family. And each one was given roles and duties in the new empire. And that's pretty much where things kind of rest at the moment, is you have these 13 families basically considered to be the royalty of creation, ruling it and doing whatever the kind of hell they want. And then 5 years ago, things changed.
Well, you missed out on the Gold faction kind of putting their own spin on the realm.
Oh, no, I was going to get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. No, that's coming. That's coming with this. Things began to change 5 years ago. 5 years ago, something tremendous happened. All at once, like multiple different things began to happen. The first is for the longest time, the Sidereals had still been kind of fighting with each other. The Gold faction was still trying to figure out how best to protect creation, but they didn't really have a lot that they could do at the moment. The Bronze faction ruled from the shadows, helping and advising the Empress. 5 years ago, though, the Empress up and disappeared. No one knows where she is. No one knows where she's at the moment. This isn't that, like, strange for them, because for the Empire, sometimes the Empress would leave for like a year or two to go do something, or to walk among her subjects and see how things were done. So, for the first year or two, no big deal. No big deal. But now, 5 years later, the realm isn't meant to be ruled without her. She basically built it that it could not function without her in it, or someone in her seat, so to speak. So the 13 slash now 12 families decide to put a regent into the throne to basically stabilize things. However, all 12 families want the throne for themselves. They want to be the next emperor or empress. So they're getting ready to go Game of Thrones on each other and start a great civil war. That's our first issue here, is basically the realm is hanging on the very tip of civil war, and no one knows where the actual leader of the empire is. So, yeah, that's really bad for number one. Number two, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell. Kejap Kajak, leader of the Bronze faction, and basically champion of creation. Like, despite everything he's done, all the horrible shit he's pulled, this man literally devotes basically 24 hours to protecting and safeguarding creation. Like, this man is dedicated to that. Despite, like, the horrible things he's done. He gets a message from Lytek, god of exaltation, going, "It is with the greatest of joy that I proudly announce the return of the solar exalted to creation." Lytek was... Or sorry, not Lytek, sorry. Kejap Kajak was furious. He marched down to Lytek's office to find out what the fudge was going on. And when he arrived there, there was a dozen what were they? Shoot. A dozen divine hounds, basically god doggos. I believe a half dozen celestial lions, which are basically living golden statues of lions who serve as the police force in Yushan. Like a half dozen scarab guards were there as well. And like literally like 40 or 50 basically bodyguards. All of these guys were Lytek's bodyguards. Yes?
Maybe you should explain what some of these things are.
Sorry.
Because
So you have the
I, for one, don't know what they are.
So the Divine Hounds, the Celestial Lions, they basically serve as the police force for Yushan. They are the people who police the gods if they cause trouble and stuff. That's their duty. The Scarab Guardians are keepers of like crypts and places of the dead. They try to make sure that those places don't get ransacked and things like that. That's their duty. Basically, these are all protective gods. That's their job, is to protect something. And they had all been assigned to Lytek by different people, by different gods. Each god had given Lytek like one or two of these people to watch over him. And some of the gods who assigned these creatures to him were members of the Gold faction. Some of them were members of the Bronze faction. The message was clear, though, when Kejap Kajak showed up and basically got probably the rudest treatment he's ever been given by them. The message was clear. Heaven would not tolerate what he had done to Lytek before. If he even thought about doing that again, there would be no mercy from the gods. They would ruin all of the sidereals for that. Ketchup was not amused by this. He was very, very upset to learn that the solar exaltations had been released back into creation without his knowledge. And, you know, Lytek had done it like 3 months in advance before he actually told him. Because he said, well, I wanted to make sure everything was polished.
The gods will make sure that Ketchup knows just how well he goes on fries.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's funny.
Pretty much, yeah. So now you have all the solar exaltations being sent out across creation and all these new solars coming into existence. That's problem 2 for the realm. Third, now you have these, to make matters worse, in what is known as the City of Thorns to the southeast. It was a fairly basic trading city, a good city of the realm. And it was attacked by a great behemoth, a creature so large that it stood up on its many legs to be over a mile tall, known as Juggernaut. It was literally created from the bodies of the dead. A great necromantic siege beast and fortress all in one. And from it came armies of the dead, as well as new dark champions of death, known as the Death Knights, aka the Abyssal Exalted. The Exalted of Death. They slaughtered the dragon-blooded defenders, and they took over the city and conquered it. Everyone is kind of terrified about what happened in Thorns, because now there's a new player on the field, one who has a basically undead fortress that can destroy any sort of defenses a city could put up, along with an army of undead and these new Exalted that no one had ever seen before. Yeah, things got really bad for the realm now. And that's kind of where you are in present day. The new solars are returning. New Exalted are starting to show up that people had never seen before. And chaos and pretty much badness is sweeping over across all of creation. And now it is your chance as Exalted to make a choice. It is up to you what creation's fate will be. Because one Exalted is strong enough to change the fate of the entire world. It's just up to you what you want that fate to be. And that's pretty much a lot of the backstory for Exalted. Just like the basic knowledge. They tried. The problem is the Exalted reincarnate Jits, who said someone should put the Exalted down if they are all corrupted or going mad, I guess. No one knows about the Great Curse. That's the issue. No one knows about the Great Curse affecting the Exalted. And the issue is trying to put down one Exalted usually takes an entire army of mortals, and even then you have like a 20% chance of succeeding.
And the people who know can't reveal the secret.
Mm-hmm. So, like, I want to turn this over to my players real quick, because Nevis, for example, gives a good example. Nevis, what is the basic power level for a starting level Exalted? At character creation for you guys. How would you say, like, how strong would one of you be? Compared to, like, something like out of D&D, for reference.
Oh, well, I mean, I say this all the time. You're stronger than a level 20 D&D character at character creation.
Mhm. And Exalted. Whew, has people in the chat and my players, have any of you guys ever watched Naruto?
Does reading it count?
Yes.
Then yes.
I have definitely watched Naruto.
Only a few episodes.
Anything from the very end of the series is basically what Exalted can throw at character creation.
Okay. Yeah, that checks out.
Pretty much anything from I could, to put this more into perspective too, every single Akatsuki member, I could make an Exalted. I know the charms that they would have to create them in Exalted. That is how powerful a starting level character can be. Like, and now imagine them going up against normal civilians, trying to fight them.
So like BS powerful.
Yeah. Yes. A single Exalted who is the players don't deal with the curse. The curse involves a system known as limit. Every time the Solar or the Exalted sees basically something that goes against their values, and they either have to ignore it or not deal with it, they get a point of limit. When an Exalted gets 10 points of limit, they go into limit break. And when a Exalted goes into limit break, the Great Curse takes over for basically as long as I deem necessary. And when the Great Curse takes over, the character basically is ruled by their passions and is usually going to do very bad things until they eventually snap out of it.
That sounds bad.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, it's
to-
going to be bad since I'm at 8 points right now.
Yeah, Guaco is almost in limit break. To put it in game terms, the Solars of the first stage were literally in perpetual limit break. Like, every time that they would get done with a limit break and get out of it, something would happen that would then put them back to 10 limit and push them back into limit break. Oh, by the way, just for fun facts for people to know, there are things called War Striders in Exalted. A War Strider is a Gundam. You can have a Gundam at character creation if you really, really, really want it.
Yes, you just have to steal it from the Sidril.
Or find it in a tomb. I mean, there's a couple of different ways. Or build it yourself. Like, it's... actually, also, in Exalted, the magical weapons and armor that people can get, they are called artifacts. They can develop powers known as evocations, though. By resonating your soul with the artifact, spirit, you can unlock powers of that artifact. For anyone who has seen Bleach, you're basically creating a Zanpakuto. And as you develop new abilities, you're basically unlocking its powers. And yeah, you can have that level of power at character creation of a Bankai from that series. Like, this is all character creation stuff we're talking about here. At character creation, you can one-man an army pretty easily and expect to win.
That's a little, huh?
Hang on a second. I'm gonna find something real quick.
So yeah, Stark. When you asked if you can be a Gundam, the answer is yes.
Question.
Yes.
What
Yes,
kind of...
Zool!
Nevis, calm down. How, crazy is the technology of the past compared to the future? Or present?
It's not even the same. The so much knowledge and technology was lost in the usurpation. The Dragonblood simply could not maintain it. They didn't have the basically only a solar could maintain the technology or build it again. The Dragonbloods just didn't have the ability to do it anymore. So a lot of technology and stuff was lost with the usurpation.
After the usurpation, it went to the daimyo of the dragon blood to control.
Basically, warlords who fought between each other for control of whatever first age technology was left.
Mm.
Yeah, no. The current level of technology is way reduced to what it used to be. It's literally like night and day. The thing is, with the return of the solars now, all that lost technology can be remade now. All that knowledge that was lost can be rediscovered because the solars can do that if they were allowed to. The solars could save all of creation if they're allowed to do that. That's not to say they're good. Some solars are more selfish, but they have the possibility of being able to do those things.
Alright then.
Also, I'm going to share something real quick in the Eben Sales. This little clip, if you want to see what happens when a solar fights an army, this is what happens when a solar fights an army. Like, I can't share it because of copyright reasons in the stream, but
You can say which video for people to search.
if you go to YouTube, everyone, just type in Madara versus Shinobi Alliance. It'll be the top video in YouTube. Literally, this 2-minute clip is literally what happens if one solar fights an army. It goes about as well as you can hope. It's a complete slaughter on the solar side. The solar will just decimate them.
Meanwhile, a lunar just becomes Godzilla and does the same thing.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, whenever you try to put a Exalted against mortals, it ends very badly for the mortals. It's just almost... It's hard to put into words just how powerful you are at character creation. If you... Like, for most of you who might be used to like a game like D&D or Pathfinder, like, how weak is a level 1 character? A stiff breeze is probably going to kill you.
Dies of 1d4 damage.
Yes.
Wizard.
In Exalted, though, when it comes to what you can do, it's like, oh, this city is enforcing slavery that I hate, and it's torturing all these poor people. Okay, I'm going to face their entire army down single-handedly, crush them, take over this city, and then turn it into a utopia and free all the slaves and help all these people and create a golden age for the city.
Dynasty Warriors! Got it, got it, got it. I'm gonna play Hyrule Warriors now.
Or,
Eh,
as an Exalted, I'm going to pick up all the slaves and move them to another town that I make.
Yep.
Or that too.
Mhm. Oh, by the way, okay, we just finished the first session. What do we do next? That's how quickly you can do all this, by the way.
Wow, make it like its own episodic thing. Like, yep, we did everything considered in an episode. Perfect.
Oh, did somebody say perfect, darling?
Yeah.
It's so delightful to see you all here. Welcome, welcome to
Why?
Kur Tales.
Why, Zul? Why?
I was wondering if anyone was going to call. I was waiting for it so dearly,
I will be
darlings.
going to my room to go back to reading now. I'll be back later.
No,
Zul,
darling. No,
you
darling.
will not leave.
And there he went.
Oh, darling, he left. Oh, Nevis, we got a new first-time chatter.
Yes, I see that. I did respond to them in the chat.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see that part.
But Ozin, hello there. Welcome on in. Nope, not furries only. I mean, just look at Guaco there. He's a human. He'd be better as a furry, but he's a human.
About 90 to 95% of creation is human. Yeah, no. Exalted lives on. So, real quick. The rule of cool is literally a fact of creation.
Well, we kind of need to wait for Arzi to get back here.
True, darling. I suppose I can introduce myself to the stream. We have so many people here, darling. Greetings, everyone. I am Domino. It is delightful to meet you. I am the most perfect of all the fair folk, and I show up from time to time in order to grace everyone with my perfect presence. Hello, Nevis, darling. How are you doing today?
If you ignore him, he eventually goes away.
Oh, darling, why would anyone want to ignore me? After all, you did make a card in order for everyone to perceive my perfection.
Under
Which-
duress.
You should show everyone that as well.
Everyone put salt in the chat.
Ah, yes, salt. Truly a most perfect substance, after all.
Welcome back.
I just left for a little funny thing.
Welcome back, Zool. So delightful to see you again, darling. But, Nevis, you really should play my card. Look at all these nice people sharing their salt with me.
Alternatively, Kur could buy some packs and play it himself.
Darling, please. I am perfect after all. Come on. You can do it. I believe in you.
Fine.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Just getting up the page to do so.
You better hurry it up, darling. I'm not leaving until it's done.
It seems that, Nevis is downtrodden.
Oh, darling, it's
I've
just
done
simply
this
because
1,000,001 times.
Rundus him has brought forth Greaves and his Greaves wondrous domino repelling shop.
Sorry, you did what, darling?
Oh, I summoned Greaves instead.
Darling, me and him have a very, very decent working profession here.
So, Greaves, how much to get rid of Domino?
There's not enough money that you can pay me.
Hey hug to Domino, Turkeme is sending you a hug.
Oh, darling, thank you. I do love the hugs.
Fine, here.
If you don't give me something to do, I'll have to amuse myself, and no one wants that.
Rundus him says perfect.
To answer your question, Jits, question is, says each player is on a journey to become a proper exalted and save or kinkify creation. So you are already an exalted by the time of character creation. One of the exaltations has already chosen you to be its host, and you've been exalted for a little bit now.
Unless
Unless, storyteller deems otherwise, but 99.9% of the time, you're already going to be an exalted.
there are some campaigns where people try to play the normal human run through, and then
Yeah.
you get exalted.
Yes. They'll have a session 0, and then you become exalted. But otherwise, really, once you are chosen, that's pretty much it. Now it's just up to you how you want to use your power, and then grow your power and learn. But an exalted, you choose a goal. Nevis, what is your goal?
Nevis desires to unify all of creation under one banner. And then go demolish the wild.
Yeah, usually an exalted is going to have a very
Noble.
or something grand and over the top.
Or you can just be like me and have a pretty mundane goal.
Which is
Basically build the Necrons. And use that to enact a certain will.
I mean, that's pretty grand. Making a army of unkillable sentient machines? That seems worthy of an exalted. The exalted are meant to be the greatest of humanity. They're meant to be basically what humanity could become if given enough power to make their will a reality. And you, as a player, you are someone who, in D&D, you might have to put up with a really stupid lord because he has power. He has an army, he has his guards who are probably going to be more powerful than you. Nevis, what happened to the noble who pissed you off?
One moment.
Needless to say, when you were exalted, in Exalted, your character can basically kind of do whatever he wants until another Exalted gets involved. Once another Exalted gets involved, that's where things can become dangerous.
You're creating the Necrons? The Liminal Exalted would like to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're working against death.
Mm-hmm. But it's always fun though, because like I know for Exalted, for everyone, like the amount of power that I'm kind of describing here is like higher than pretty much anyone will ever get to play with in like any other game. Like if you try to compare this game to D&D, like a level 20 D&D character doesn't even come close to what basically a character creation Exalted can do. A character creation Exalted character could fight the gods of D&D and probably win. Especially if they are a combat-oriented Exalted, they could win and kill that god. That is how powerful they are when they decide to actually do shit.
If you make the character right.
Correct. You could make a character who trying to think of like different characters that I've created throughout the time. There's so much that you can do that literally you name it. Name any anime character, name any sort of character at all from pretty much anything. I can tell you how to make it an Exalted. Like, there is very little that I can't make an Exalted at character creation.
Now, watch out for the Himbo Solar. They're gonna break everything. Things shouldn't work this way. I'm gonna fix it.
Oh, God. Yeah, when a solar says those words, watch out. Things are going to happen. I'm trying to think. Does anyone else have any questions, real quick? Like, literally any questions, because I need stuff to go off of.
Balzar has a question, if you didn't answer it.
I just saw that. Yes. Yes, you could have a dragon companion like that.
Dragon Drive? I've never heard of that. I'm searching that up now.
Yes, we could do that.
Hey there, Taldarius. Right now, Kur is lore dumping all over everyone. I enjoy saying it like that because it bothers him.
Can I turn my howl into a sonic cannon?
Yes.
But first, we need to hear your best howl.
My roommate's sleeping.
Uh-huh.
If you really wanted to hurt something, you'd use an Exalt to grab one of the pillars and hit somebody with it. Good luck surviving creation stabilization.
You'll be fine. I mean, if you're Exalted, you actually might be fine.
Well, fine from the hit, not fine from moving the pillar of creation around.
I mean, you might be fine, depending on what charms you have. No one else will be, but you might.
And be careful of which direction in creation you are.
Yes, creation is divided into different directions. You have the west, which is basically seas and islands. You have north, which is basically an icy sort of wasteland. Think like Vikings and things like that. You have the east, which is the most populated direction of forests and woods. And the south is the desert. And then at the center is the Blessed Isle, upon which is basically Imperial Japan and China. Basically, to put it simply.
And you do not go down.
Yes.
That's where all the evil beasties and everything was shoved when creation was being made.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to go down there. But kind of like I was saying before a little bit too, is one of the things I just love about Exalted though is it's so open, it's so big, it's so great that you can do anything you want in it. Like, yeah, you have to fit within the world and such, but like it's so open that literally you kind of name it, we can make it. We can make that happen within the universe. You can get inspired by whatever you want, and it's like, yeah, we can make that. I can do that. And for me, I love that about the game because I love going to my players and saying, that is awesome. Let's do it.
You want to go punch the sun? Good luck.
I want to go punch the sun. Okay, we can make that happen. I actually know how you can do that.
Go to Yushan. Go to the games of divinity. He'll be
And
there.
punch the unconquered sun in the face. I can't promise you what's going to happen afterwards, but you can try to do it.
Balasar, what do you mean by that? What is Neva's Sage and the game?
In the game, I think.
Oh, in the game. You know, I never actually thought of that.
And if you were to punch the sun, there's a thing that you need to say before you do. Henshin.
Joshua, why do you do this to me?
You're welcome.
I mean, I could do it. I've always resisted, but I've wanted to do it. I know the set of charms I need in order to do it. And I have proudly resisted in all of my years of playing Exalted. I have never once made a Toku hero, no matter how much I've wanted to. And I've really wanted to sometimes, but I haven't.
Do it.
Don't tempt me.
I just have no idea what they're on about.
Do it. But first, help me spend all of Sark's points.
Sim, remember the mage game.
What about it?
What was the last thing that we did in the mage game?
Derped around?
The thing that Tanya did. The battle series. That's what we're talking about.
So it's something to do with Common Rider.
No, Toshime was saying I should make a Common Rider Exalted. And then Sark said I should do it too. And it's like, don't tempt me. I've tried really hard not to do it. Despite how much I really want to do it. Now, I have been running Exalted and World of Darkness games for over 10 years now. So I have done these games literally like I know most of the rule sets like the back of my hand. Essence is the newest version, so it technically hasn't even come out yet. We only have the rough draft of it. But it's been pretty fun. It takes a little bit of getting used to because I keep using third edition rules instead of Essence rules because they're the same thing except some changes. So it's like, which rules did they keep the same? Which rules did they change? This is the part where knowing everything kind of by heart gets you confused because you get the two swapped over because they're so similar.
And I'll put this way. My last game master that I had would not let me play a Sidral.
I wonder why!
Who wants pattern spiders to attack people?
As a person who loves the sidereals, who my favorite Exalted are the sidereals. I love me my reality bending super ninjas, as we fans sometimes nickname them. But I would be terrified of you playing one of them, Guaco. I would be absolutely freaking terrified of you playing one of them. Because I know the kind of hijinks you would do.
You tried to punch me? Well, there's a pattern spider in my place. What
Now you
happens
have
when what happens when you punch a pattern spider?
Bad things happen to you. But no, one of the things I like to joke about as a DM, as the storyteller, is I have the eternal storyteller curse. I will always be the one who runs the games. I will never be the person who plays in the games. So it's like, I wish I could play a character too. I wish I could. But someone has to run the games. But I also have to make the joke too of I should not be allowed to play the games because Nevis, what do you think would happen if I actually had an actual PC in the party?
About the same thing that happens with Toshime having one.
What's that?
Bonk.
I haven't gone crazy in the Exalted game.
No, he hasn't. He's really held back. Which,
You're
I mean,
about
to be
to.
fair, you're exalted. I mean, like, this is like par for course. Like, you're expected to go, like, declare war upon an entire country single-handedly. And then win.
Just be like me and have no idea what you're doing.
I mean, that's also somewhat normal for them.
I've been going easy. I could have led us directly to Mahasuchi using some of my powers.
No, it's just like, for me, it's like, I wish I could just play as a player with you guys, because I would have fun. And I would enjoy making my DM squirm. Because I know how to make characters in Exalted. Mostly because I have to know how to beat those types of characters if my players ever pull them out. It's hard. It's very hard. Yes.
You do,
Go ahead.
I said you do bring up a good point. DMs are some of the scariest players because they know how to pull the crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And I created story characters, not characters that break the story.
Yes. But I would always build characters that you guys could face. I never tried to build an actual character that I would make.
The perfect defense.
Because like if I made a character, I actively try to hold back and create something that is appropriate for you guys to face, and you guys still just slaughter it anyway.
No, murder slaughters it.
Also true. Murderer, though, is designed to be a combat-oriented character, and he's very good at that. For me, though, like, I know a few tricks that would probably make it so I could one-shot pretty much anything I wanted to fight. But that's not necessarily always going to be fun, so I usually try to do things that I think would be fun and interesting rather than, well, I feel like I want to take over the world. Of course!
I'll put it
Sorry.
this way. Nevis has a couple armies here, and he's ready to lead them. The enemy comes up and punches Nevis. He gets pocket dimensioned into the wild.
And then Nevis proceeds to lead a righteous crusade through the wild, attracting all of the fair folk to him that he converts into his soldiers. And by the time he makes it back, it's only like an hour has passed, and he leads a triumphant vanguard as his army is struggling to hold down and proceeds to slaughter the one who did this with his new army.
Well, back to the wild. Punch.
This time he parries it.
No, I won't change my icon.
Yes. Any other questions at all? Curious or otherwise?
Do Infernals basically, when they hit their demon form, become a giant demonic version of themselves?
No. Their demonic form is whatever you want it to be.
Oh.
So, actually, we haven't gotten into depth on this group. Sark is playing what is called an Infernal. An Infernal is a solar exaltation that was corrupted by the Yozai to basically serve them. They're known as the Demon Princes or the Green Sun Princes as other names for them. But they are their true name are the Infernal Exalted. One of the charms, a group of charms that the Infernals can learn, they aren't technically in this version because they're considered to be what are called heretical charms. But they do exist in 2nd edition, and until said otherwise, anything in 2nd edition that is not contradicted by 3rd edition is considered canon. At least for my games. So, Sark, some of the charms that you could learn allow you basically to become a newborn primordial.
What are these charms and how do I equip them?
You have
You
to
gotta
learn
find
them.
'em.
Yeah, you have to learn them, and you have to basically study your essence and learn about yourself. And then whenever you exhibit your demon form, it'll start to change, and it will become your new primordial form. And you will become a primordial, basically. Once you have mastered all of the charms, you will become a new primordial, and you will be able to create from yourself, from your soul, you will be able to create devas to serve you, just like they had.
Yeah, forget the whole building army thing.
None of the Yozai want their Infernals to know that they can do this, and none of the Infernals have been around enough to know that they can do this. But they can do this. Because
the question is, who is your Infernal?
only only an infernal can actually do this. Because the solar exaltation was touched by the Yozai's essence and power, because of that touch, the exaltation absorbed what they were, and they give that power to the exalted soul, which allows them to, with the right charms and growth and ability, become a new primordial.
And thus, if Sark becomes a primordial, he'll be able to reshape his master back into a normal primordial.
Mm-hmm.
What if I don't want to do that?
And then you just do whatever you want.
Cool.
You'll still have the demon inside you.
Tomato, tomato.
Yes, I actually just brought up the Broken Winged Crane, which is the book that has the charms in it.
Cool.
Because I wanted to actually see if I can look at some of the charms and what they were.
I could pull out some of my first books. First
I got
edition
it.
books.
Yep, it's only in second edition for these ones. I got it here, though. Uh, do, 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 do. Let's see. Okay. Because we got actually extra charms for them that you guys get. This is all second edition stuff, so it'd have to be updated to third edition. All right, so let's see. The first charm that you would get is called Scale Shedding Solution.
Okay.
Oh, that's a neat little charm. A cunning warlock may discover this useful trick somewhere between the Ebon Dragon's manic struggle for freedom and Adorjan's temporary dismissal of those twos that encumber her. Drawing in a quick breath, the Infernal flares his essence out in a red-black shockwave that rips the armor from his body and tears it into fluttering strips of essence. This intangible whisk clasps into a pair of otherworldly black flames, which float just above the warlock's shoulders for the duration of the charm. Mechanically, Scale Shedding Solution allows the Infernal to reflexively remove any armor that they are wearing, even created by charms or sorcery, and you can immediately have it reform on your body by just turning this charm off. And once you hit Essence 6+, you become immune to basically any sort of counter magic from the Emerald Circle, which is the lowest tier of magic, which is basically the only type of magic Dragonbloods can use.
So GG Dragonbloods.
Let's see. The next one that you can learn, I want to see if this is one of them. This one is very, very fun. It's called Emerald Angel Unfurling. A Green Sun Prince has only to breathe to assert absolute authority over her existence. This charm provides protection against all unwanted shaping effects. It creates an invisible essence shield with integrity layers, which act as health levels. Whenever you are subjected to a shaping effect, so say Domino tried to turn you into a dog, you can roll your essence plus your willpower against the difficulty of your opponent's essence. If you succeed, you automatically just negate it. If you fail, your shield loses one layer.
But I'm already a wolf, though.
Well, no. Say Domino tried to turn you into a stuffed animal, then. This charm would make it so either he fails completely and you just negate it, or you lose one layer of your shield, but you're still protected from it.
Now, if this is Domino, you'd be turned into a salt dog.
Yes. Also, with this charm, is automatically upon either automatically whenever you fail the dice roll and negate one of the effects on you and basically fill up a health level, you can automatically roll to reactivate this charm again for free.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, when this charm is in use, basically whenever anything tries to reshape you, the image of however many you rolled. So say you have 6 layers. When someone tries to reshape you, a swirling mandala of 6 wings forms over you, and basically the wings cloak over your body like a protective field, and one of the wings will shatter off of you.
Interesting. Talk about
And
layers of shield.
And once you hit Essence 4, you can actually walk into the pure chaos of the wild without being affected by it.
Mm. Sounds useful.
Okay, I found the one that lets you become what you wanted.
Giant
It takes-
super wolf demon.
It takes 1 season to use, and you must surround yourself only with those things that are steeped in your essence, like your artifacts, your demons that you have summoned, and nothing more. Concentrating inward, you dive into the enormous power of the conflicting forces within your soul. And you redefine who and what you are. You are allowed to remake your cast, your anima banner, and basically everything unique about you.
Cool.
You also get a new anima power as well.
I don't know what that is, but neat.
The special abilities that you get whenever you spend essence.
Oh.
Then the one after that is the direct sequel to it. This one, basically, you develop. You remember how I told you about your character developed in a cocoon and then broke free as you became an infernal?
Yes.
This charm remakes a new cocoon around you. And this one basically allows you to remake your essence and start becoming a Yozai. Or, sorry, a primordial.
Dope.
Yeah, and one of the charms that you can get actually allows you to start creating a world inside of your own soul.
What?
You are able to create a world within your own soul. And you can use charms to pull the things within your soul out into the real world.
Just don't create gods to manage your realm.
Yeah. No, literally everything within your soul is real. It still functions even if you aren't paying attention to it, and you can enter into your world whenever you want.
I'm gonna be real. I'm a little bit speechless. I don't really know how to respond. Other
You're a
than,
god.
huh?
One of the charms allows you to start creating demons from your soul.
Why should I be surprised? I shouldn't be surprised about this. I should not be surprised.
Yeah, and they consider you to be your creator. They consider you to be the one who created them and to be part of you. You create a third circle demon, and then that third circle demon creates 7 second circle devas. And then those 7 second circle devas create basically a little army of first circle devas. And if the demon is banished or killed, it is basically sent back into your soul. And
Does it...
the last two that you can get, the first one allows you to telepathically communicate to any demon that was formed from your soul, and you can also possess them at will.
That's kind of cool.
And then the final one allows you to start making Akuma, which basically is an Akuma is someone who can take some of their power and basically force it into someone's soul, and you basically gain dominion and power over them forever. They basically become your puppet. It can
So like
still
So like a heart eater, but way cooler.
when you do this to someone, they still have their free will, but they can never oppose you. If you tell them to do something, they have to obey. They have their free will only because you let them have it. But they have to do anything you say, and you do give them a lot of power, though. You give them a very good amount of power in exchange for their basically unending devotion.
I feel like Nevis might have a problem with that.
Joke.
Only Nevis?
I mean, to be fair, we haven't seen much of Guaco's, character.
That's true.
And the same goes for Zul.
We haven't had much time with the realm yet.
And then there's Murder, who, well, he just murders.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the name.
Oh yeah, it fits the name great. That doesn't mean that we've seen much of him.
We saw Murder go after an in-game boss and almost defeat him.
Yes.
Sounds fun.
Yes, it's about 10:30 now. I think I do need to be getting to bed. I still have to make sure everything is in order for tomorrow. And I think this is a pretty good stopping point here.
Okay. Thank you for Kur Tales.
Thank you everyone for coming.
All right.
Question is, now what?
Well, at this point, unfortunately, I think I'm going to be calling it for the evening on the streams. I am just really tired tonight and kind of need a small break. Ozen, do make sure you hit that follow button and come join us again, though, as well as the rest of you. Tomorrow, we do have our Pokemon Mystery Dungeon tabletop campaign, which is always a delight. And we've got plenty of other stuff that we do as well here on the channel.
A steadfast supporter.
Thank you for that, Ozen. But thank you everybody for joining us today for Kur Tales. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Twitter, Patreon, and more. There on the website, as well as down in the description below through our link tree. Thank you to my patrons, donators, and subscribers. It is because of your support that I'm able to continue bringing these streams to you all. I really cannot do this without your guys' help and support, so thank you. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/ZGFgaming. It is one of the best ways to support the channel, though you can also do so by simply sharing the streams around. But for now, thank you for joining, and I bid you all the most fundest adieu.
Bye.
Bye.
See you all another day.
So as I do, one more thing. Well, actually, I'll just end the recording.